Thanks for being here. Okay, we are streaming live on Facebook. Are you okay with that, Sandy? Yeah? Okay, awesome. Okay, guys, sorry about that. We'll get started now. So we've got slides, and these are super information dense slides. So if you see a topic and I talk about it too fast, it's because I have a lot of stuff coming out each night, but just jot it down. And then at the end, you guys can, or even during, if you guys want to raise your hand or wave at me or put something in the chat, Laura can grab my attention, hopefully. I can expand on it, but more than likely, if there's something you want to learn more about, and you can just let us know at the end and we'll send you a free resource, or we'll send you an article, or I'll just email you back and tell you more about it, okay? So I know we're always taught, especially with adult learners, to only teach 3 main concepts, and that's something that I've been criticized for a lot. I like to give a ton of content just because I want to make sure that if this is the only time you've ever learned from me or been with us, that you get so much value, you get so much out of it. So the negative side of that is that sometimes people feel overwhelmed. It's kind of like education by fire hose, I think somebody called it. But don't get overwhelmed. Just know that in business, there will always be more you can do. You're never going to get it completely done. There will always be a next level. Even clients I've been working with for 5.5 years, their business has grown so much, their industry has changed so much, technology has changed. There will always be more on that list. So be kind to yourself, pat yourself on the back, and as you check off one thing at a time, just celebrate that, okay? So we're going to talk about sort of 3 main components about being more proactive this year. We're going to talk about being an effective leader. We're going to talk about effective marketing, and we're going to talk about strategic planning, which is something that every company should do, but I think a lot of companies don't do because it seems like or sounds like something more complicated than it is, or it sounds like something that only gigantic corporations do, or something that it just doesn't apply to you, but it absolutely does. And I'm going to break it down very simply for you guys today. So effective leadership, the very first tip that I can give you as a leader, if you want to ask yourself, who do I want to be as a leader? This is one of the most effective questions I've ever asked anybody. And you kind of see people have those aha moments when I get the honor of coaching people in person and I ask them what kind of leader do they want to be? Or what kind of mother do they want to be, or what kind of husband do they want to be? You can kind of see, oh, I've never thought about that before. And you really should. You should ask yourself that question and answer it and remind yourself of it a lot, often. I don't know if you don't have an iPhone, I don't know how to do it, but on iPhones, something that I learned from one of my mentors is you set alarms. So on my phone every day, 3 times a day, an alarm goes off and it has my words. So it reminds me who I want to be. Because otherwise we're very reactive. And as business owners, especially if you're working in the business, you are constantly being pulled different ways. You're constantly reacting to things, but that doesn't have to be how it feels. You can just be more intentional. You can decide, here's who I want to be, and remind yourself of that. And I recommend asking yourself that question before you go into any new activity, especially when you are going from work to home, asking yourself before you walk in the door, or if you're going into a meeting or you're going to deal with a client, just asking yourself, again, who do I want to be right now? So setting that intention, not just reacting in the moment. And then the next piece of really effective leadership is meaning and purpose, goals and roles. So for your staff need to feel like they have a purpose in their role, that their job has meaning. If you have somebody who's just doing a task that they think is insignificant to the big picture, they don't understand how it connects to the overall vision, they don't maybe feel like they're really important, they're lacking that meaning or purpose in the role, and they will not be driven. They will not be motivated. They will be just less amazing than they could be. And then the roles and goals part, this is just really great that it rhymes, because I found that anybody who I taught this to never forgets it. So roles and goals. If you just remember these 3 words, in almost every situation in your business, with partnerships, with other stakeholders, with your staff, with clients, if you're not really clear on your role and your goals, then things can get very mucky. And if you create a job description for everybody on your team, and it's been a few years or even a few months and you haven't really looked at that job description, and they haven't looked at that job description, people don't remember what their job descriptions say. So you want to be very, very clear on what are people's roles and what are their goals. So this includes you as a business owner. And a lot of times business owners don't think that they have to have a job description or that they have to have goals, but that's a huge missed opportunity. And I'll just be really clear about this. You don't have to do any of this stuff, but every single thing that you do is going to move you that much further ahead. It's going to bring you that much more profitability, and it's going to bring you that much more systemization, so freedom from your business. So meaning and purpose, roles and goals. Remember that with anybody in your business that you're trying to motivate. And then just remember that for yourself, and if you have a business partner, you want to really clearly outline your role. So what do you do and what don't you do? And then what are your goals? Because if you have a meeting once a month with the other owners of the business and you just sit down and you're like, well, how's it going? Well, good, I guess. Okay, yeah, it's going good. How do you know if you're doing a good job? How do you know if you're living up to your expectations? You look at your roles, your job description, which can just be a list of the things you do, very simple, and your goals. So is it a partner's job to hit the sales goals? Is it another partner's job to hit the marketing goals that we're going to talk about in a few minutes here? And then with all your staff, don't expect your staff to be awesome without very clear roles and goals, okay? Now, vision. Everyone tells me stop using caps, but I just can't help myself in certain parts because vision is so important for every single part of your life. If you don't have a vision, a compelling vision that makes you feel excited about it, you won't be likely to stick to something. If let's say that you started a new healthy way of eating, or you started a new fitness routine, or even in relationships, if you don't have a vision for something great, you're not really motivated to commit to that thing, and you don't really achieve things in that area. So it's the same way with your staff in their jobs. A lot of times, we as leaders have this grand vision for the company, but we never share it with the staff. And that's a huge miss, because a vision can be an absolutely beautiful way of pulling your staff the direction that you want to go, rather than having you have to push them from behind. Does that make sense? You always want people to be pulled by something that really inspires them, rather than having to push them. So we will talk about vision even more when I talk about components of successful change, because vision is a huge key to successful change in business. And as you all know, we will always have changes happening in business, whether it's a pandemic or new software or new customers. There's just always going to be changes. So we're going to talk about the 5 components of effective change. And vision is one big part of that. So cast the vision for people and then reiterate the vision. Okay. Questions are your superpowers. Okay. So one of my coaches told me this years ago now. I can't remember her name even. I'm so sorry. I hope she's not listening to this ever. But she taught me this, and it is so, so, so true. So if you're ever in a situation with a staff member, a client, a business partner, and you're feeling like you're kind of hitting a wall, ask more questions. Stop talking. Just ask more questions. And this works in almost every difficult situation I've ever been in. I find that you can't really fix something by talking more. And I used to think when I was a new manager that if I just talked enough and I just told the people enough and explained it well enough, that staff would listen to me. But that's definitely not how it works. So we want to use questions to find out how our staff are feeling. We want to use questions to find out what kind of roadblocks they might have. So if they're not achieving a goal, what's in their way? Just ask them. And a lot of times staff won't tell us unless we ask. If you're doing a really good job with your relationships with your team, you're probably getting a lot of feedback, a lot of open, honest feedback, and that's awesome. But a lot of times staff don't think that it's really their place to just tell you what to do better in your business if you don't ask. So you want to ask a lot of questions as a leader. And emotional intelligence, I don't want to spend too long on this, but I think that we all know a person who is not emotionally intelligent. It's almost like uncomfortable to be around them sometimes. It's like they don't have the self-awareness to know how they're coming across to people. So that's a big first part of emotional intelligence. You want to be self-aware. And if you're on this call or you're watching this recording, you are at least self-aware enough to know that you want some help in these areas. You want some help in your business. So good for you, because that is a very rare thing. And to be self-aware and to understand the way that you're showing up for people, and even the next step is to be intentional about how you show up, to regulate the way that you show up for people. That's emotional intelligence. So being self-aware and then sort of controlling the way that you show up for people. And it can be as easy as having that reminder to be the leader that you want to be. None of this is rocket science. It's a lot of stuff, but each thing separately you can absolutely do. You also want to understand, as part of emotional intelligence, you want to understand how people are feeling. And for me as a young leader, I will never forget one of my staff who I thought I was doing a great job. When you're young in your first couple management jobs, it's so bad when I look back. But one day this lady got really upset with me after what I thought was a normal request, and just told me that I made her feel like garbage, and that I was a terrible boss, and that I made everyone feel bad, and I was just blown away by it. And I kind of realized, I started reading a lot of books on emotional intelligence, but I realized at that point that I had never looked back at my emotional wake. So like the wake that a boat leaves in water. If you make sure that you look at people before you leave a conversation, you get a sense for how you're leaving them, and you want to leave them better than you found them. You want to leave them happier than when you found them, more motivated, more filled up. So those are kind of my 3 keys for emotional intelligence. And there's some awesome books out there about emotional intelligence, but I find that if you can just be self-aware and you can regulate yourself and you can be aware of the emotions and the feelings of others, then you're killing it. So those are the 3 main points there. Then ask and implement feedback. So ask for and implement feedback. So a lot of business owners never ask for feedback, and that is the hugest missed opportunity, because clients will give you feedback, your business partners will give you feedback, other stakeholders will give you feedback, your staff will give you feedback, and you really want staff feedback, especially right now because unemployment is going to be quite high. A lot of people think of staff as, you know, they can be replaced. And I just really, really, really want to caution you against that. Thinking that or treating people that way will never work for you. And if you're not asking for feedback and implementing it, then you might as well just be driving with a blindfold, because you really, this is again, trying to find out how you're showing up for people, find out how your product or service is coming across. You really want to ask for and implement feedback. And while I would absolutely recommend that you cross-train, you have procedures, and you have systems in place so that if someone does quit or get terminated, that you can replace them with as much ease as possible, absolutely never ever treat people as though they're replaceable, because first of all, they're human people and they should never be treated like that, but it won't work. Okay, so ask for and implement feedback. That's just one way that you actually, like, it really, staff really understand that they're important to you when you do that. There's so much more I could say about this, but I'm just gonna do a few more points on leadership, then we're gonna move into marketing. Okay, so challenging conversations. I've read a lot of books and gone to a lot of seminars on challenging conversations or effective conversations or coaching staff effectively. And I think that one of my favorite ones is Crucial Conversations. And I'm gonna maybe get Laura to look that up for me, make sure that I'm saying it right. We'll add it at the end maybe. I think it's by Susan Cain. Anyways, one of my favorite things that I've ever learned was to start with sorry in a conversation. So actually, this just happened for me today. So if you have a situation where you're not getting what you need from somebody, let's say a staff member. It actually wasn't any of my staff, just for my staff who are listening. So if I'm not getting what I need from somebody, and even if I feel like that person is wrong, or if I feel like that person doesn't understand, or they're misinformed, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If I can find something to be accountable for, if I can start by apologizing for my part in it, everybody's walls will come down. Everyone will be less defensive, and they're willing to come to the table and have a conversation. So I had that situation today, and I'm sure if I didn't start by saying, I'm so sorry for the way that I came across, and for not understanding, you know, the way that the information was delivered to you. you could physically see the arms uncross and the legs uncross, and like just the relax. Like it was amazing. And so that is not ever meant to be used as any sort of manipulation or insincere act. It's truthfully, you find something to be sorry for, you find something to be accountable for, and you apologize for your part in the situation. And if you're really, when you get really good at this, and you will, it just takes practice like anything else, you can very quickly think of, okay, I should have just been more clear about what I expected, or I should have called instead of emailing, or I should have reviewed your job description with you, or I should have made your goals more clear, you know? So I'm sorry for this. And then don't ever ruin it with a but. Just say you're sorry, and then you can move on. The second piece is you have to listen. And when I say listen, I don't mean just keep your mouth shut and nod your head. I mean really, really listen, and make sure that your brain knows listening means you are listening with the possibility of having your mind changed. So if I just keep my mouth shut and listen to you talk, that's totally different than if I listen to you and think that, okay, based on what I'm hearing, I am open to changing my mind. That's what I really think listening is. And if you do that as a leader, you'll be so much more effective. I can see it in the body language of staff when I'm not fully listening. I can totally see it. They don't look happy. They don't look like they feel important. They don't look engaged. And unfortunately, we have a lot of distractions nowadays, especially if you don't have your notifications shut off. But you know, emails, or you get a text message buzzing, some people's watches even buzzing on them, but really listening and being open to the idea of changing your mind based on what you hear from people will make a massive difference for you. And then really, if you're having a challenging conversation, you kind of feel like you're stuck, I find that if you sort of back up and then remind every party involved that you're all working towards a common goal or a shared vision. You can have vision for a business or for a conversation. It works on so many different levels. Just sort of, I kind of picture it like if you're in a truck or something and you're trying to go forward, but there's something in your way. Just back up and just remind people that we have the same end goal. And if you're having a challenging conversation and you don't have the same end goal, that's your problem. Okay, so next, essential components of successful change. So I actually wrote my thesis on this. I love change management. It's so interesting. If you're ever going to take anything in university, I recommend change management courses. They're really cool. If you like psychology, if you like leadership. But so in my paper, I wrote about what I thought were the most effective components of successful change, because like we said before, we change our technology, we change our software, we have a pandemic, we change our healthcare rules, we change our business model. A lot of us have to change. At one of our businesses, we can only have 5 people in the store at a time. We have taped off areas. Like, it's crazy how much change is coming. So you really want to be an effective change leader, because change is not easy for people, and you want to make it as easy as possible for your team. So I said earlier, and I'll say it again because vision is so important, you have to cast a really compelling vision. Talk about, create with your team a vision that compels people, a vision that pulls people towards it because it's so awesome. And reiterate that vision all the time, over and over. People need to remember that common vision. Remember in the challenging conversations bit, I was saying that you need to have that common end goal. Vision is that common end goal. And we want to make sure our vision is compelling for staff, not just for us. Like, if you tell your staff, well, my vision is to be the richest business owner in Canada, do you think they're going to be super compelled to achieve your vision for you? No. So come up with a vision that feels great for everybody. The next part of successful change is you want to make sure that you're measuring employee engagement before, after, and during the change. So hopefully you're doing some sort of monthly survey where you're asking staff, you know, on a scale of 10, how happy they're feeling that month, or how engaged they're feeling, or how they feel about the leadership. Just getting some sort of gauge on how engaged your staff are. And then during the change, you want to do that again. So as long as you're doing this monthly, you should be fine. And then you want to survey them again after the change. So you just want to watch your numbers. And if we can go back up high level for a minute here, I just want to remind you that although we're talking about a lot of little things, you have 3 major pedals in your business, okay? We have the marketing pedal that we can push, we have the financial pedal that we can push, and we have the leadership pedal that we can push. So in your leadership, area or your leadership pillar, you're going to be surveying your staff ongoingly because you want to know if you're doing a good job as a leader. That's the most important KPI for a leader. How happy are their staff? Okay, and are their staff hitting their goals? That's a whole other presentation, so I'm going to stay focused. Effective leaders. So if you are not the only leader in your business, you want to make sure that the leaders of the teams or the leaders of the departments are effective leaders. And this sounds really simple. It sounds so simple, I couldn't believe I was putting it in my paper. But I found that one of the biggest problems in change initiatives, and just so you guys know, almost 75% of change initiatives fail. So even though things are constantly changing, we only succeed at successful change 25% of the time in our business. So this is why I'm mentioning this. It's a hugely important part of leadership. If you have another leader running your business or part of your business, you have to make sure that they're getting feedback and they're getting evaluated based on the happiness of their staff and the success of their staff. Because if you have a leader that goes out to try and execute a change and their staff don't like them, they don't feel cared about, they don't want to perform for that leader, the change dies right there. So make sure that anybody who's in charge is effective. And to be effective, they need to do the things that we're talking about today. The fourth piece is to plan out the change. So a good example is we took a business from a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week. And so we just took an Excel spreadsheet and we just tried to plan out the schedule for people. What would it look like if everyone worked 4 days a week instead of 5? And it took us a long time, but we finally got it to a point where we knew that everybody would be happy and it was fair and it would work for the business model. And then we shared it. So if you don't plan out that change and you don't sort of think, well, what could happen, or what if this happens, what will we do? You're going to get roasted by your staff, right? If you just come out, we're doing this new thing, then they'll start to poke holes in it and they'll say, well, what about this? What about that? We planned it out, you know, here's what the scenarios are. And also if you do have staff who are, what's the word I'm looking for? Not difficult, but you feel like they're kind of fighty, like they're fighting you on stuff or challenging you a lot, make sure you have a private conversation with them and pull out those questions, okay? Find out what's going on for them and find out how you can be better. And don't forget that you should start that conversation with an apology. If you can find something that you can apologize for, starting with sorry is just magical. Okay, money versus trust as motivation for employees. I really wanted to mention this one to you guys. I was trying to pick from so many topics, so I narrowed it down to my favorite ones. A lot of people think that you have to pay staff more money to make them more motivated. But there's a huge study that I like to quote in my seminars about how a 1 point positive move on the trust scale. So if you trust somebody 1 to 10, you trust them a 7, and you can get them to, you start to trust them at an 8 instead of a 7. That 1 point move is equal to a 40% raise in income in terms of overall satisfaction for that employee. So if they only trusted you at 5 out of 10 before, and now you've become more emotionally intelligent, you've asked more questions, you've been more vulnerable and authentic with them, now they trust you more, just a little bit more, 1 point more, that is the same effect on their overall life satisfaction as a 40% raise in income. So if you have a staff that you don't think is happy, don't keep throwing money at them. Work on your leadership, work on that trust. If you're looking for a book on trust, and maybe Laura, you could throw this on the last slide too with that other conversations book, The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey is a great, great book. I love it. And then the last piece that I'm going to recommend for successful change is create urgency. But don't create urgency before you've got trust, before you've planned out the change, before you've got the vision, before you've measured engagement. It has to come last, because when I say create urgency, this could be something as dramatic as, we will go out of business if we don't implement this change. And you don't want to tell your staff you might go out of business if you don't have trust, you know, if you don't have open communication, because they will be scared when you tell them that. But a more easy example of creating urgency would just be like, we won't hit our sales goal, we won't be able to give raises, or we won't be able to do Friday lunches, things like that. But you have to create some urgency, otherwise people don't realize that it's necessary to change. I'm going to skip this part because I'm running behind. Really quickly, actually. So how do you increase trust? Just keep your word, and just be aware that when you make somebody a promise, it's not just when you say, I promise you that I will never do that again. It's if you say you're going to be at a meeting. It's if you say you will follow up in a week. It's if you say you have their back. It's everything. So use your calendar to make sure that you keep your word. Okay, if you tell somebody something, just say, hold on one sec, I have to put that in my calendar, because that is the most common that's the most common reason I see people not trusting their leaders, is because they don't do what they say they will do. But that person's not a bad person. They're not dishonest. They weren't lying. It's just that they forgot or they got busy. But that still comes across to your staff as not keeping your word and not being trustworthy. The other thing you don't want to do is talk about staff in front of other staff, because it doesn't matter who they are. They're wondering if you're going to talk about them in front of other people. And I know all of us are going to be guilty of some of these things. I'm certainly not perfect, but these are the things that we want to strive for. Okay. Last, I just want to touch on learning styles really quick. I'm going to talk about format learning just as one example. There are a lot of different books and ways of looking at this, but format learning was basically a 4-quadrant learning style system that I learned about probably like 10, 12 years ago. And there were just 4 different types, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you had 2 levels that you were the most, that fit you the best. So I was what they called a 2-3. And that meant that I need to read things to learn. So you'll notice that I write a lot of words in my things. And I needed proof. I needed to know that they were an expert, that they actually knew what they were talking about. So this is how sort of the type of learner that I was. And until I learned that, I didn't realize that I didn't value listening. So if you were like, podcasts for me are super hard. I'm like, where can I follow along? And I love reading books. And then also sometimes when people are talking, I'm thinking, are you qualified to be teaching this? Or what is this person's credentials? And I didn't even realize that I did that before. But the thing that I was really messing up was that everybody who'd ever worked for me that wasn't responding to me just wasn't my learning style. And so this whole time I had just been like, why don't you get this? And I was trying to get them to learn the way that I learn. And so you usually teach the way that you learn, because that's just how your brain is set. It's sort of your default, right? Makes sense. If that's how you learn, you think that's how people learn. So just be aware of that. If an employee is not getting something, there's a chance they don't learn the way that you do. So if you can write or read something, or if you can have a video or an audio, and then also you need to let people try to learn by doing. So if you are in the trades or any sort of business where you work with your hands, even a lot of online tech stuff now on computers, a lot of people have to learn by doing. So you might have to show them, then you might have to get them to write notes so they can review them, and then you might have to let them do it to really get it. So don't get frustrated, don't give up, just try different learning styles. Okay, that was 1/3. We're moving now into effective marketing strategy. So that first part was all about leadership. And if you guys have any questions on that, maybe I'll take the leadership questions now, if anybody has any. And if not, that's okay. I will keep going. Okay, so Laura, I'm trusting that you will like turn on your camera and wave at me if there's any questions, because I don't see any. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So second pillar, okay, so we talked about the leadership pedal. Now we're gonna talk about the marketing pedal for a bit, and then we're gonna talk about strategic planning, which has a lot to do with your financials. So thanks for staying awake, guys. Zoom fatigue is real, I know, because these group calls have gone from like 60 people to 6 people. And I was saying earlier too, even the biggest names in the industry that I learned from, they're having just very few people on their calls too. So I think everyone's getting kind of sick of this way of learning. So I'm really proud of you for disciplining yourself to be here, staying awake and staying with us. So number 1, effective marketing strategy. The very first thing that you have to do before you waste your time on any marketing or advertising is set goals. And so you guys can all still get the marketing plan template for free on our website, tmhbusiness.com, under the free resources, or you can email Laura. But in that marketing plan template, every section will be explained for you. So you don't have to try to worry about writing everything down here. But the very beginning piece, I want you to set goals, even if you don't go get my marketing template. If you just are gonna try to plan your own marketing from this call, set goals for your marketing. Do you wanna hit a sales target? Do you wanna increase your gross profit because you wanna advertise more of the higher profit items? Do you want to increase your brand awareness? Or some people even set hiring a certain number of people as a marketing goal. And you can do it really, really well with marketing. It's amazing the things you can do when you just set a goal. So that's the first piece. You have to set goals for your marketing strategy, okay? And then make sure those goals are achievable by marketing. I know that sounds silly, but sometimes people are like, well, I want to set this as a goal. And I ask them, well, how will we do that through marketing? Sometimes you can't. And so we'll talk about strategic objectives in the last section. Some of them can't be achieved through marketing. They have to be achieved through other ways, okay? So second, we want you to identify your best customers and survey them. A little note that I added here, especially right now, because consumer behavior is changing quite a bit. One small example of that is that new people who have never shopped online before are shopping online now, and they will stay online shoppers. So before COVID, we were seeing, I want to say still less than 20% of online sales happen, or of total sales happening online in North America. And that number is steadily climbing because of the pandemic. And I don't think it's going to go back. I think there will be some people that want to come in person, but I think that once an online shopper, once you see that, that automation, that convenience, especially if they can find cheaper prices, some people are going to stay there. So what we want to do is really find out who are the people who are still coming into our businesses, or can we help them buy through us online? And we want to make sure that even if we've surveyed them in the past, we do it again, because behavior is changing. Their fears are changing, their needs are changing, their wants are changing. And then you want to make sure that your production or your purchasing is matching the new demand or the new consumer behavior. So if people used to buy, so in a recession, for example, people used to buy new cars a lot. It was really easy to get finance for new cars. When a recession starts to come, people start to hold on to older cars. So they're more likely to spend more money at an auto repair shop rather than buying a brand new car. It's just one example, but there will be changes. So get back out there and survey your customers. Also, search online in your industry, consumer behavior reports. There's a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of data being put out for free all the time. Okay, if you have any more questions about this, we can talk privately, or you guys can put a question in the chat at the end. Next, I say this over and over again. I talk about it in every marketing presentation, but I need to say it again because it's still not happening in some places. You have to ask people how they heard about you. Okay, and most companies just have a little tick sheet at the front desk, and they put a little tick under Facebook, or they put a little tick under Google. If you're not doing this, you're missing out on so much important information, and we need that information to calculate the effectiveness of the time you're spending on social media or on your Google listing or doing blogs, and the amount of money you're spending. Let's say you're paying for SEO, you're paying somebody for SEO every month. Or let's say that you are paying an employee to spend 10 hours a week on Facebook. All of that stuff, we can calculate return on investment, cost per customer, cost per lead, conversion rate, if we track where our leads are coming from. Okay, now when I say track your lead sources manually, I mean for the people that actually come in or call in or email you, that sort of thing. This is the people who actually communicate with you, okay? Because online, the last point here, there are a lot of people finding your website or your Google listing online, and we can look at that. Every single website should have Google Analytics installed, and you can just go every month and look at your audience, and you can look where people are coming from to get to your website. You really want to make sure you're doing that every month. And also, if you have not claimed your Google business listing, or you don't have that neat little Google business app, I don't know if you guys can see this, it's like the little blue house looking one. You really need to get it. Just go on the App Store and search Google My Business, and then make sure that it's accurate and up to date, and that you're posting on there the way that you post on your other social channels, okay? But so online tracking, there's going to be a lot of people coming to your Google listing every month, a lot of people coming to your website every month, and we want to know how they got there, okay? And that stuff's all available to you for free. Google Analytics on your website and your Google business listing, just on your Google business listing on Google Maps. And then make sure that you're tracking your lead sources manually in your business. Okay, I know this is a lot. Just gonna, Laura, I'm gonna put you on my dashboard here so that you can turn on your camera and wave at me if there's a question, okay? Because I don't have the chat up right now. So we're still talking about effective marketing strategy. Remember, first pedal, we were talking about leadership. Now we're talking about marketing. So the next thing that I want you to make sure that you're aware of don't be obsessed with this, but be aware of it, your competitive environment. So for some of you, your competitive environment has changed in the last 9 weeks. Some of your competitors have gone out of business. Some of your competitors have stopped selling what they used to sell and are now selling hand sanitizer. Some of your competitors have completely destroyed their brands by the way they're acting on social media. Or the way that they've treated their clients or their staff. And things are just different out there. So when I see your competitive environment or your competitive landscape, just want you to look around at the area that you serve and look who else is out there that could possibly take business from you. And I'm just going to take a minute to talk about this. Part of your marketing plan should be a competitive analysis. And we really want to find out what characteristics of a business like ours are important to ideal clients. So SEO is probably important, you know, where you come up when people search for your product or service on Google. What else is probably important? Your reviews, your online reviews. Do you have a lot of good online reviews? Are they all positive? What's your Google reviews star rating? That's another important one. You know, if you look at somebody who has 100 Google reviews with a 5-star rating versus somebody who has 2 Google reviews and one of them's like a 2-star, you're obviously going to go to the one that has more reviews, right? Or you're going to trust that one more. So there's a lot of things you can check out online about your competitors. You want to go look at their social media, look at their website, read their reviews, that sort of thing. In the very best case scenario, you could mystery shop them sometimes, or you could talk to somebody who's had an experience there. Just be very careful when you're analyzing your competition that you stay objective, because it's very easy for you to say, well, oh, I heard someone who hates that company and they said this and this and that is wrong. And that can lead to you being not staying objective, and then your analysis is not very useful for you. So really try to rate you and your competitors on each of these things in a really objective way, and try to look where you can stand out. So usually we'll find somewhere in your competitive analysis that shows you, hey, we have a really great opportunity to get a lot of positive Google reviews with comments because none of my competitors have figured out how important that is. Or most of my major competitors have bad reviews. Or maybe, hopefully for you, they haven't even figured out that Google reviews are incredibly important. So in your competitive analysis, the bare bones of it is that we're looking around to see who else out there could take clients from us, and what's good about them, what's bad about them, and how can we exploit that? Not in a terrible, horrible way, but like in a business way. How can we capitalize on that opportunity? Now, the next 4 things can only be calculated if you're tracking your leads, so how people heard about you, and your customers. And I'm sure that you're all tracking your customers. There can't be anybody on this call that does not have their customers and their sales in a software program. So we want to track, first of all, what we're getting back. What's our return on every spend? And that doesn't have to be just, you know, the $10,000 we paid for a billboard. It can be the $2,000 we paid for someone's salary while they spent the time doing Facebook. Does that make sense? And we want to compare the cost to what comes in. So how much revenue came in because of that time we spent on Facebook, or how many people came in because of that sign that they saw. So return on investment is just what came in versus what we paid out. And obviously you want things to have a positive return on investment. You want to be making money, okay? And you want to think about that in every area of your business. I encourage you not to take on any expense or continue paying any expense unless you can show that it's really providing a return on investment. It's driving your business. It's helping you get new customers, or it's helping keep your current customers happy, okay? Cost per customer. So this is a really cool number if you haven't figured this out. If you look at how much you spent on, let's say, Facebook, including the time that you spent on there and the amount you paid for ads, and then you look at how many new customers you got from Facebook, you can divide that cost by the number of new customers, and you get your cost per customer. Now, if your cost per customer is anywhere near what they might spend in their lifetime with you, it's way, way, way too high. The lower you can get your cost per customer, obviously the better. Okay, so if your customers spend maybe on average $100,000 with you over their lifetime, you might be willing to pay $5,000, $6,000 per new customer. But if they only spend on average, let's say if they're your customer for 10 years and they spend $100 a year, they only spend $1,000 with you in their lifetime on average, you're not going to want to pay very much for that customer. So you want to be doing things that you get, you get to reach a lot of people cost effectively, okay? So you want your cost per customer to be as low as possible, obviously. And then with your cost per lead, it's a very similar calculation, but we're doing it with leads, not customers. And the difference is that leads are anybody who inquires or could become a potential customer versus people who actually do business with you, okay? And that distinction is important because the next one, conversion rate, means how many people from the 100 leads you had, how many of those converted into customers? So of the 100 leads you had, how many did business with you? And so if 50 out of 100, that's 50%. And you want to look at your conversion rate for each type of marketing or advertising, because if you just look at your conversion rate as a whole, which I have to tell you as a business owner, we usually don't accurately guess. So if you think you're converting almost everybody who is a lead with your business, you just want to make sure you collect the data and use your data to back up that assumption, because every single business I've ever worked with, we found huge opportunity. We found a lever that we could really move in their conversion processes. So we looked at the leads who weren't becoming customers and we figured out how we could be better. And instead of having to pay for more leads or, you know, spend money on advertising or spend time on marketing, we just converted more leads into customers. And the famous example I always use is a business in Calgary who gave me, this was their plan. They wanted to give me $50,000 to spend on marketing. And instead of doing that, we had an employee work an extra 20 hours a week and just be at the front desk all the time, answer the phone, answer social media, be there when people showed up. And they didn't spend any money on marketing. They just spent a little bit of money on having somebody at the front desk. Their lead conversion doubled and they smash their revenue goals with no marketing. So I always tell that story because people don't understand the power of increasing their conversion rate. It is so stupid to go spend money trying to get more leads if you're not converting 100% of your leads. And if you're finding that your conversion rate is low, you either have a problem with your message or you're not reaching the right market. So you might be talking to the wrong people. Does that make sense? Because if someone shows up at your place to buy something and they show up there and they don't find what they're looking for, obviously they've been misinformed, right? Or our messages aren't getting to the right people. So I've already kind of referenced this, but average sale per customer and lifetime customer value. So you also want to know these numbers. And it's not a bad idea to calculate your average sales per customer every month, or at least every quarter or every year at least. But you want to know on average how much a customer spends with you. And this is another thing, guys, that you want to recalculate because consumer behavior has changed. And, you know, I was talking to someone the other day who used to sell a lot of one item, but now they sell a ton of other items, you know, things that people buy during COVID, hand sanitizers, masks, stuff like that. Consumer behavior has changed. So we have to remeasure these numbers. Knowing your average sale per customer is great because number one, you can aim to up it. You can do all sorts of things to up it. Number two, you can use it as a goal for your staff. You know, if your staff really take care of people, if they really serve them to the fullest extent possible, they will spend more money on average. So just take your sales and divide it by the number of customers. That's how you figure out that average sales per customer. And then the lifetime customer value, you just figure out, so if a person does business with you for the rest of their life, on average, how much will they spend? Okay, and that number is important to know because you want to compare that to your cost per customer, how much money you're spending on advertising, how much time you spend trying to get clients, purchase frequency. So this is an area, you guys, if you can increase the purchase frequency of your existing clients, that would be such an easy thing for you to do compared to going out and getting 100 more customers. Does that make sense? So if on average your customers buy from you 6 times a year, if you can find a way to make it more convenient for them to come more often, or if you can find a way to encourage them, you know, a lot of times you just have to inform them. Like if you sell 10 different things and they only know about 2 of them, if you just let them know about the other 8, you know, once a month you send an email about 1 of the other 8, you will increase their purchase frequency. And it's much easier to get somebody to spend another $1 with you than it is to go out and get a new person who doesn't know, like, and trust you to spend $1 with you. Okay, so just, and a little bit, sorry, I should have wrote this down, but it's really important for you to know that the absolute #1 way to increase your revenue is with existing customers. So do that research, find out what their fears are, find out what their needs are, find out the problem you can solve for them, and make sure they're informed, make sure they know everything you have to offer and how you can help them, okay? Because increasing your revenue from existing customers is just a breeze compared to going out and buying new customers. especially, you know, I'm going to leave COVID out of this conversation, but with so many ads and distractions and notifications, it takes them like 20 impressions of your brand to take action. So in the old days, it was like 4. Now it's like 20. So you really want to make sure that you think about all these things when you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go get some new customers. Before you do that, really look at if you can increase your purchase frequency, or if you can raise your prices, or if you can encourage them to buy different things, because existing customers, really, really huge opportunity there. Really good segue actually to customer retention. So keeping your customers happy is a lot easier and a lot better for your brand, and a lot cheaper than losing customers and having to replace them. So when you get a customer, don't make that famous mistake of, I want to say it was like a cell phone company ad. I'm so sorry, I should know the name of this, but it was like they were making a joke of how other companies only rewarded new customers. So I think it was like 2 young kids, and they only gave one of the kids an ice cream, and the other kid was sad, and they're like, sorry, you're an existing customer. And it was such a good ad. I'll have to find that. But don't do that. Don't reward new customers only. Don't be like, I think TELUS gave away TVs to people who signed up as new customers, but we called because we're an existing customer. They're like, no, that's only for new customers. So don't do that, guys. Survey your customers, take care of your customers, serve your customers, and just delight them, because they will keep coming back and they'll bring you referrals, okay? Online marketing and sales. So this is a big one, and I really hope that you guys ask some questions here if you have them, or you at least email us afterwards, because online marketing and sales is if it's not already a hugely important part of your marketing strategy, it needs to be. And now more than ever, because the people who weren't online before are online now, okay? And people are really, 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 really needing social connection, social interaction, right? So I don't know if any of you have bought Facebook ads in the past little while, but they are super, super cheap. And organic Facebook posts are reaching more people now, and people are just spending a ton of time online. So if you can find a way to effectively sell your products online, but even not sell your products, even if you could just have them to browse so people could look at them, or at least talk about your stuff online. Okay, so be on social media, make sure you're connecting with the right people, and do your research, because actually I didn't get to watch the whole thing, but there's some really cool new stuff out with Facebook. Even you can pretty much just sell through Facebook now if you want to do that. So there's a lot of options, and this part's hard for me to talk about, because with the different businesses that are on with us, every business is so different. So there will not be one system that I could recommend to all of you. But there will be a way for you to sell online. So if you want to connect on that one after, you guys totally reach out to Laura or I, okay? And Laura, you're going to turn on your camera and wave at me if there's any questions, right? Okay. So I want to talk about, thanks, Laura. I want to talk about your marketing budget, because it should be 0. And so some people really hate me for saying this, but it's the truth. There is no business that I work with that spends money on marketing and advertising, unless it's sponsorships. And we do that because we like to donate money, okay? You don't need to pay for marketing and advertising if you can get a lot of really, really great Google reviews, a lot of really great online reviews on whatever other platforms are important for your brand. If you can really get clear on who your ideal customers are and talk directly to them. So instead of talking to everybody, talk specifically to your ideal customers and mention their characteristics, identify with them, talk about the things that they like about you, talk about helping them with their fears or solving their problems. The other thing is lead conversion. So a lot of people are leaving money on the table with their leads. They don't realize that all the people who are inquiring aren't turning into customers. So there's a lot of opportunity there too. And so my recommendation for your marketing budget would be to do such a good job with your marketing and sales processes that you don't spend any money on marketing. Unless, like I said, a lot of my clients like to sponsor things or donate to kids stuff. You know, you can do whatever you want. It's your money, but I would really, really love to see you get your marketing budget down to 0. And that doesn't mean 0 like totally $0 because you will absolutely be paying somebody to spend time doing things like social media and things like that. But I wouldn't think that you would have to go buy some billboards or some magazine ads or pay for things like that if you do this right, okay? Now, that said, if you find that Facebook is really working for you, just as an example, and you have nailed the message, you're converting really well, it would be silly to not put some money into that, right? If it was already working really well, I'm not saying don't ever do Facebook ads. I'm not saying don't ever spend money on like an online marketing company or somebody who's providing a really great return on investment for you. But ideally, my goal for you would be to do this all so well that you don't have to spend any money. So I hope I didn't hurt anyone's feelings there, because I see value in a lot of services, but yeah, we'll deal with that on an individual basis if you guys have questions. But okay, customer experience processes. Boy, this is like probably the most dense presentation I've ever made. Sorry, guys. Make sure you're making notes, okay? And ask if you have questions. So the customer experience processes, I'll just tell you this really quick. I want you to draw out a path, like as artistic as or as non-artistic as you want, but from the very first inquiry to the time that they remain a happy, satisfied customer, what are the steps in the process for your customer? And then make sure that each step, you have a procedure for it for your team, because you're not always the one who's answering the phone. You're not always the one who greets people when they come in. You're not always the one who's replying on social media. So you want to make sure that your staff are very clear on these processes so that they can treat each lead and each customer the way that you want them to be treated. And specifically the lead conversion processes. So whatever happens when a lead inquires, this is such a huge area of opportunity, guys. So if you haven't already sat with your team and talked out the procedure for handling a lead, staff have no idea how important leads are until you tell them. Like so important. And you can even make it a KPI or make it a goal for them to convert a certain percentage of leads. And again, if you've heard me talk about marketing at all, you know that I define marketing as authentically sharing who you are, what you do, how you serve people, okay? So there's no tricking, there's no trying to pushy salespeople into converting into clients. We just want to have a process for our staff and our team so that they know, no question, how to treat a lead, how to serve a lead, how to take care of a lead so that we can have them be customers, be happy customers. Reviews, feedback, and referrals. Okay, so online reviews, I've talked about that. I can't talk enough about that. They're worth so much money to you if you can just get a lot of positive reviews with comments. And guys, you just have to ask and you have to follow up and ask again. Okay, so we're going to ask you at the end of this presentation, like we ask at the end of every presentation. And people are so kind, especially when you do your best, you really show up to serve and you really try to give them what they need, what they came for. They're so kind. Like we have so many kind reviews. Makes me want to cry. I'm so grateful. So thank you guys so much if you're on the call and you've already left a review. I really appreciate you. So with reviews, the easiest way I think for Google reviews is to go into your Google Business and just grab that link. You can share right out of there. If you go into the Google Business app, go to customers, and then you go to the little share button in the top right, you can instantly text out that link. You can send it out through Facebook. You can put it on, you can post it on Facebook or LinkedIn. You can send it in a message. You can email it, text it, anything. So, or you can just copy the link and then go put it anywhere you want. But you really have to follow up and you really have to make it like fail-proof for people. You have to give them the link. You have to remind them, here's the link again, you know, thank you so much for leaving me a good review. Here's the link. You know, I really appreciate you doing it, because we're all busy. We all get distracted. We have so many things on the go. So don't be afraid, especially with really happy customers, to just ask again or provide the link again. People, as long as you're doing an exceptional job for people, they're really happy to leave reviews. And I think especially if they're in business at all, they understand how important they are. So especially if you know other business owners, they're probably very likely to leave you some good reviews. Feedback. So we want to be asking for customer feedback for sure. We talked earlier about when we're being an effective leader, we're asking for feedback from clients, from staff, from other stakeholders. You want to make sure that you're getting client feedback. And guys, remember, if you've just joined us late, COVID is changing consumer behavior, okay? So if you got feedback before, oh, you guys are great, 10 out of 10, we love you, and now your sales are going down and you haven't gotten feedback recently, you really want to go back there. Really want to ask for that, because people are changing because of the pandemic, and we need to change your business to keep up, okay? And referrals. So I'm not going to talk too much about referrals because I'm getting a little bit behind here and I want to make sure we get you guys out of here on time. Last time I think people are almost falling asleep by the end. I know Zoom fatigue is real. So referrals, I'm just going to say really quickly, sometimes I think it's right for a business, sometimes I think it's not right. So you want to do this really well. You want to make sure it's on brand. You want to make sure it's something that your customers really like, that feels good for them, okay? And same for you. You don't ever want it to feel cheesy or tacky or not on brand, but some brands absolutely do this beautifully. If you want more information about that, we can connect after. So hitting your revenue goals. So you can't hit your revenue goals alone ever, okay? So what you want to do with your revenue goals is make them into goals, smaller goals for your team. So you want to make KPIs or key performance indicators, or just call them goals, whatever you're more comfortable with, and just give these. So take your revenue, let's say your revenue goal is $1 million, divide it down into chunks each month, and then give it to your staff. So every month, here's your goal, and then follow up every month. Here's your goal, here's how you did. Now, if you guys don't have job descriptions, we talked earlier about roles and goals. If you don't have job descriptions, which can be very simple, just write out what they're supposed to do, their responsibilities, okay? And goals or KPIs, you will be just blown away when you give these to your staff. Take your big goals, chunk them down, give them to your team, and every month say, hey, here's your goal and here's how you did. And work with them on, you know, overcoming barriers to achieving it or supporting them and hitting it, and you guys will just be blown away. In every single case, at minimum, everybody's numbers went up 10% after implementing goals and feedback every month. And that it's usually a lot higher than that, but yeah, you'll see really great immediate results from this. And if you want to make them even more effective, get your staff involved in setting their own goals. So when people help to create something like a goal, they're way more bought in. They support what they help to create. I think that's a Brennan Burchard saying, so I did not make that one up. And then daily or frequent leading indicators. So leading indicators are things that you can look at ahead of time before the month is over, sort of thing. So a leading indicator might be how many leads we're getting each day, like how many people are calling in and inquiring every day. A lagging indicator is like your financial statements. So every month when you look at your financials, and you should, definitely every month at least, it's too late to fix those. Does that make sense? But if you're watching your leads every day and you're like, oh, weird, we usually get 20 leads a day and today we only have 5. You want to go look at, is our contact form broken? Is our Facebook ad not delivering anymore? Like, have we reached our maximum clicks on our Facebook ad? You want to go investigate, why are we not getting the leads that we usually get? Okay. And don't let yourself, guys, so many people do this. COVID's going to be a great excuse. Don't let yourself use COVID as an excuse. Well, it's just COVID. No, maybe COVID changed consumer behavior, but it also knocked out some of your competitors. So how can we get those people in here? What do we need to do? How can we serve better? So don't ever try to find reasons or excuses. Just go try and find the solutions. And remember your questions. Best way to find solutions. Okay, this is the last leg, guys, the third leg. So this is the strategic planning section, and I really wanted to break this down and just make you guys understand how simple it is, because for a lot of us business owners, I think that we feel like we don't belong with like a certain group of people, or we feel like maybe, you know, we're just not at that level, or I think they call it imposter syndrome. I'm not sure if you guys have read or heard anything about this, but it's basically like you get to a place where you're like, should I be here? Am I successful enough to be here? You might find this at like charity events or networking events, or even in these calls, you know, on calls where people talk and interact with each other. You might find yourself hanging back and being quiet because you think, am I qualified to be in this room? Am I good enough to be in this room? And strategic planning has that stigma. So a lot of people, I think they think strategic planning is a lot more complicated than it is. And I just want to break it down for you guys really simply and tell you exactly what we're going to do, okay? So your vision for the company, we've talked about that a lot. Talked about it when we talked about being an effective leader. We talked about it in your marketing plan. We talked about it, you know, for difficult conversations, for change management. Vision is so important, and you really want to cast that vision that compels people, that just pulls them towards it, that excites them, makes them proud to be on your team and excited to achieve that vision with you, okay? So if you don't have a vision, you want to make it, and you want to get your team involved, or at least get your team's approval and make sure that they're engaged and they're excited about the vision, okay? And then your mission statement. So if you have a mission statement, when we're doing strategic planning, we're going to review it. So we're just going to look at the who, what, the why, and the how, and we're going to review it. Make sure that it's up to date, make sure it still fits who we are as a brand, make sure that it's still really speaks to our ideal customers, and make sure that our team is bought in. Because if you have a vision, mission, or culture statements that your team is not bought into, it's pretty much a waste of paper. So you really want to make sure they're involved, okay? And again, all of these sections are more clearly outlined in our marketing plan template on the website, and it's just under free resources on tmhbusiness.com. So if anybody's kind of panicking, like, where can I find this? It's right there, or you can send a message to Laura and she'll get it to you. Okay, so your culture statements. Now, if you do this right, your culture and your brand should be synonymous, like they should be consistent. People who experience your brand online and people who come into your place of business and experience your staff should feel like they're experiencing the same company. So culture statements are just a set of rules for your staff and yourself about the way that you conduct yourselves at work, okay? Or it's been called the way that we do things around here. So you want to have rules, or sometimes people call them core values or value statements, or you can call them whatever you want, but it's a set of rules for how people act, okay? And they want to be really brand aligned, and you want your brand to really match your culture. And culture is an asset that you can't buy, or you at least can't buy it quickly. You definitely can't maintain it without good leadership, but culture is so important to your business, and it's so important that your culture, the way that your team acts, the way that your team feels, the way that they conduct themselves matches your brand, or matches your marketing, matches your social presence, okay? So we talked earlier about strategic objectives or goals in your marketing plan. Now, some strategic objectives, which are basically a fancy way of saying big goals for your business, sometimes you can't achieve your strategic objectives through marketing. Sometimes it needs to be more of a project that you and your team do, or it needs to be something that you assign to your financial controller, your office manager, somebody in a finance position. Or it needs to be, assigned to multiple people. So net profit margin, for example, if you currently have like 10% net profit and you want to have 30% net profit, we want to make sure that we involve the right people who can actually affect that, okay? So a really good example, a common example of a strategic objective would be a net profit margin. And I say margin because if you have $100,000 a year and you have $10,000 left of net profit, that's 10%, right? But if you have $1 million a year and you, I don't know, pick whatever number you want, if the percentage is lower than the $100,000 a year, you want to really look at why the percentage decreased. Yes, the dollar amount will be higher because we did a lot more sales, but you really also want to keep an eye on that percentage, because your profit as a percentage of your revenue, ideally, during growth phases, you can plateau a little bit, but ideally you want it to keep climbing because you're getting more efficient, more effective. There's so much I could talk about here. Flexibility, I want to talk about just for 1 second, okay, guys? Flexibility is absolutely one of the most important things that you should be building into your business. If you haven't learned that from COVID, I don't know if you ever will, but flexibility will always be something that is important to your business because things are always changing, okay? So if things change, you want to be able to change the business to still be able to increase your profit. Does that make sense? As industries change, as shopping behaviors change, we want to see what we can do to change with it to still be able to serve. And sometimes you might need to go find new ideal clients. You might need to go speak to a different audience. There's so many ways that you could change, but I just want to make sure that I mention that. Okay, so strategic objectives or goals for the rest of the year, I want you to set those. Okay, what do you want to achieve for the rest of the year? Is it a sales number? Is it a net profit number? Is it a net profit margin? Is it a gross profit margin? Is it increased brand awareness? So out of every 100 people you ask, if they currently only 10 of them know about your business, increasing your brand awareness to, let's say, 50 or 60%. Another common goal or strategic objective might be increasing employee engagement, increasing conversion rate, that's a great one. Increasing customer retention, or even increasing average spend per customer. So you want to pick the top 1, 2, or 3 drivers or goals or strategic objectives that are going to make the biggest difference for you in having you move closer to your vision, having you execute on your mission statement, and make sure that none of your goals violate your culture statements. And I want to talk about authenticity just for 1 sec again. So I think I say the word authenticity more than anything, but it's really important that you never contradict yourself. You don't want to tell your staff, you know, the way that you feel is the most important thing to me, but then say your only goal is to hit this sales goal. Do whatever you have to do to hit the sales goal, and then never ask them for feedback or never support them or never coach them. You want to be really consistent and authentic in your planning, okay, in your communication. I hope that makes sense. Competitive analysis. So if you guys did your competitive analysis with your marketing homework or in your marketing plan, you can use that again in your SWOT analysis as long as it's really recent, especially with COVID, or anytime something changes in the environment. I want you to redo this, okay? And I'm not sure if you ever heard of SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's one way that we can analyze the competitive environment. When you look at strengths and weaknesses, you want to look at your strengths and weaknesses and the strengths and weaknesses of your competitors. So the competitive analysis spreadsheet does a really great job of doing that. And we could even put numbers to it and really look at those numbers in comparison to each other. But what it doesn't talk about are opportunities and threats. And so right now, it sort of depends on your paradigm or your mindset, right? A lot of people right now would say, oh, you know, COVID is a threat to my business. Consumer behavior changing is a threat to my business. They could pick any example, but you guys can pick the opposite. You can say, because of this thing, there's an opportunity. Because if your competitors see it as a threat, that means that you can exploit it or use it as an opportunity. Does that make sense? If it's going to be tough for somebody, it's going to be easier for someone else. There is always opportunity in business. You just have to look for it. So if you're confused about where that opportunity is, do more research, do your surveys again, take a look at your dashboards, look at numbers. So have leads increased or decreased? Where have they been coming from that's increased or decreased? And what processes could we improve or create to make sure that they go back up? Or what else can we do to increase those numbers? Just make sure that while you're trying to find opportunities, just keep asking yourself, what can we do? What can we do? Okay? Don't focus on what you can't do, because that's just a waste of time. Okay, so that competitive analysis, like I said, look at strengths and weaknesses, which we can use your competitive analysis spreadsheet for, and then do outline the opportunities and threats that are out there in the marketplace. So there might be new government regulations, which this one actually doesn't happen quite often. And when I say it, a lot of people are like, what do you mean? But now is a great example. So now the cleaning requirements and the social distancing requirements and just the new rules for having people in your business are really slowing people down. So that's a threat, new government regulations, okay? So then what's the opportunity? How can we find a new way to serve where, like in a way that our competitors aren't? Okay, I could beat that one to death, but I'm gonna keep going. So your action plan for the year, this is the most important part of strategic planning. You're gonna lay out your goals, which we've already come up with, and you're gonna lay out underneath those goals, what projects do we have to do to get things in place? So we might have to complete your marketing plan. We might have to complete a marketing calendar, and we might have to put marketing meetings in the calendar every month. So those are the completing the marketing plan would be like a project. It's something you start, you work on it, and then it's finished. Not to say that you should never redo your marketing plan, you should. But that's an example of a project. So underneath your strategic objectives, we're gonna come up with, are there some projects we have to do? Who's gonna do those? When are they gonna do them? Let's put it in the calendars, and let's book a follow-up meeting so that we can check in on that and make sure that that happens. Okay, and then key performance indicators. You really want to look at, of all the people who work for you, of all the roles and all the goals, we want to make sure that the goals or the KPIs are chunks of your big strategic objectives. I'm getting Zoom fatigue, sorry guys. So if you have a big goal of serving 1,000 customers a day, let's say, you can break down that 1,000 customers into 10 or 100 per employee, and then just make sure that they know what their goal is, they know what's their KPI, and they're getting regular feedback on it. So they know what their goal is, they know how they're doing. I'm not going to elaborate anymore because I want to keep that really clear. So break down your big goals into smaller goals, give them to your team, make them KPIs, give them feedback, and help them achieve them. Okay? And then if it's you checking on your team and their goals, you want to put it in your calendar, And if it's another leader, you want to put it in their calendar. But when you give somebody an assignment or you give them a KPI, you have to put this in the calendar to follow up, and you have to put it in the calendar to do the thing. I feel like I'm using so much hand sanitizer. I'm a good example of changing consumer behavior. I never used to use this much hand sanitizer. So make sure that you guys are putting everything in your calendar. If you have been following me for a while, you're probably sick of hearing that, but please put it in your calendar. It's how you keep your word. It's how you do your most valuable activities. It's how you increase your profit. It's how, yeah, it's everything. You have to make sure that you put things in your calendar so that you remember to do them, because execution is absolutely, and I write this everywhere now, execution trumps everything. If you don't do this stuff, it won't do you any good. Like, you might have some paradigm shifts, you might have learned something today that kind of opened your eyes, so you'll start to look for different things, and you may discover more opportunities just because we kind of turn on some lights for you today. But if you don't do the things that you've learned about, that you know that if you do them, they'll make a difference, then you won't get the results. So just remember that execution is the key, okay? And executing happens when we put it in our calendar and then we do it. And I'm gonna jump from just to the bottom here for a second and talk about this. If you're not executing, there's a chance that you, I'm gonna say telling yourself a story. Sometimes when I say telling a story, people think that I'm saying that you're telling a lie, but I just mean in your head, you're telling yourself something about something, okay? So when I say find a story that motivates you to execute, I think it's easier to remember when I say find a story that serves you. So if you're not doing something that you know you need to do, you just need to change your story about it so that you feel like doing it. So rather than thinking of something as a chore, if you can think of the benefit you're going to derive from it, or how much better your life will be because you do it, you're way more likely to execute on it. But you have to put it in your calendar. Okay, nobody can remember all this stuff, especially if you're a parent and a business owner. I don't know how anybody remembers all that stuff. It's crazy. So one calendar, put the stuff in there and make sure you do it when it comes up, okay? I know that seems like I'm really overemphasizing something simple, but this piece kills businesses. They know what to do. They know what they should be putting in their calendar. They know that they should do it when it comes up in their calendar, and they don't do it. So execution, execution, execution. Now, your budget is a really important part of strategic planning. So you want to make sure that you have a financial plan for the rest of the year. What are the sales goals that you want to hit? What are the gross profit goals that you want to hit? What are your expense goals? Make sure that you stay within or underneath your expenses. And then what are your net profit goals? And you want to do that for every month, okay? Not just for like a big 6-month chunk. You want to do it for the whole year, and you want to break it out by month. So if you're just going to do the rest of 2020, just do the next 6 months, okay? And set a goal for each month for income, expenses, and profit. And then every month, make sure that you review your actual numbers from your bookkeeper, accountant, or your bookkeeping software, your profit and loss statement, or your income statement. Compare, did we hit our income target? Why or why not? And looking at this and asking that question will give you everything you ever need to improve your business, okay? Where do we have to go look? If we didn't hit our revenue target, let's go look at our lead conversion. Let's go look at our advertising. Let's go look at our marketing. Let's go look at our Google reviews. Let's go look at the person who's supposed to be doing this procedure. Are they doing it? Do we need to improve it? So those numbers and looking at the monthly is going to give you so much insight. It's everything, okay? That's the financials is the #1 pillar that I teach everybody. Make a financial plan, and then every month review your actual results versus your goal, okay? And again, make sure it's in your calendar. You want to ask for those financial reports, you want to put them into your budget, and you want to do that review where you look at what was the goal, did I hit it, why or why not, every month, okay? And if you're somebody who doesn't want to look at your numbers, or you've got a business partner who does the numbers, please, please, please stop doing yourself that disservice. If you run the operations, if you manage the people, and you don't look at those numbers every month, there is huge gold waiting there for you. Because when somebody manages the numbers or does the numbers, and then another person does the operations, when the operations person gets to know the numbers and starts to ask questions, and the numbers person explains the numbers to the operations person, fireworks. Like, there's just so much money hiding in there for you guys. So if you're not a numbers person, become a numbers person, okay? Tell yourself a story that serves you. Those numbers are going to make you more numbers, more money on your bottom line. So become a numbers person. And all that means is that you're going to understand sales goals and hitting your sales, and then how much you spend or your expenses, and how much is left over, your profit. You can do it, okay? And then last, you really want to put into a plan. Yeah, and I said last, that's actually true. This is the end of strategic planning. This is the big scary thing that a lot of us don't do. It's just annual planning, okay, guys? The last piece of it, really, really important, is monitoring and evaluation. So you want to make sure you have those meetings in your calendar to go and pull information to ensure that people are hitting their goals, and then evaluate people or give them feedback. So let them know, here was your goal, or here was your project on the end date, and here's where you're at. What's going on? And remember, if you're having a challenging conversation, somebody's not hitting their goal or they haven't finished their project, starting with sorry, listening, and using questions as your superpower is really how you're going to figure this out, okay? Don't go into a coaching session ever and just be like, you didn't do a good job, you got to do better, or you're out of here. You know, it's pretty much the opposite of everything we talked about in the first 20 minutes. But monitoring and evaluation, that's got to go in your calendar. And you're going to get sick of that word if you guys hang out with me much longer. But calendar, you have one 24-hour block of time in your real life, and you have 24-hour block of time in each day in your calendar. So just use it, block everything in there, especially your follow-up, your monitoring, your feedback. Okay? So that is it, which is good because I think I'm losing my voice. Officially talked too much today. So we talked about 3 big things today. We talked about being a good leader, we talked about effective marketing, and then we talked about strategic planning. So if you just do these 3 things for the rest of the year, I'm sure that you guys can already see how much more money you're going to make on your bottom line just from doing like one of these things. But if you do all of these things, you can have a better 6 months than any full 12 months you've ever had in your life. You don't need to use COVID as an excuse. You just need to flex and change and measure and just move those levers that you know how to find now. Okay? So I really hope that serves you guys. And if you have any questions, I will take them now. Thanks guys for staying with me so long. I appreciate you. Yeah, I for some reason can't see the chat, Laura. Found it. Okay. Oh, Kayla, did I insult billboards? I'm sorry. Billboards are the best, guys. Okay, guys, if anybody has any questions, you can throw them in the chat because I can see them now. And if not, then if you want slides or you want an article on anything that we talked about today, or, oh, the book recommendations. Did you put those anywhere, Laura? You want to throw those in the chat maybe, Laura, for me, if you found those? I think one was Crucial Conversations by Susan Cain. And I can't remember the other one, sorry. Okay, I'm going to Google the book, just one sec. If you guys have any questions, throw them in the chat. And if not, that's okay too. Oh, I was wrong. So the book that I was talking about, Crucial Conversations, it is a good book. It's by Al Switzler, Joseph Grenny, and Ron McMillan. But I think the book I was actually talking about when we talked about Start With Sorry, I think it's Fierce Conversations by Susan Cain. Susan Scott. Not on fire today. So Fierce Conversations is by Susan Scott, and then Crucial Conversations is by those other guys. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to send me an email or Laura an email later. Oh, thanks, Laura. And as we said before, guys, these meetings are not going to be free anymore after this. It's called the Better Business Club. If you guys are interested in finding out more about it, it's just like this every month, but you pay a little bit and you get a ton of insights and access to a lot of great tools. So if you guys are interested in that, you can message me or Laura, or you can email tim@tmhbusiness.com. He really handles the Better Business Club. It will be me teaching it, and you'll have access to Laura and I all month. It's just Tim that runs the application process. And then we actually have one spot right now. We don't usually have openings, but we have a spot right now for one one-on-one client in our coaching program. And this is by application only. If anybody's interested in this, you can text or email Laura or get a hold of us through our website at any time. It's a pretty cool application process, actually. You'll learn a lot just by applying. But yeah, we're pretty picky about who we work with, but there is one spot available if anyone's looking for that. And then I always have to ask you for Google reviews. Oh, thanks, Kayla. And guys, if you haven't left me a Google review, I would be so grateful if you could Google TMH Business Coaching and Consulting and just leave us a few nice words. Comments are really important. Make sure that you ask for comments, like words on your reviews when you guys are asking for them. They count a lot more than just the stars with no words. Okay, and of course, guys, your time is the most valuable, precious thing that you have, and I can't tell you how grateful I am that you spent the last hour and a half with me, and you guys are the reason that I do this, so I really appreciate you spending time with me, and I hope you guys are proud of who you are, because there's not a lot of people at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night, you know, on a Zoom call trying to learn how to be better leaders, so good for you guys. Thank you guys so much. Have an awesome night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Jeff. Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys.